took some time to kind of heal for myself. I really needed it. And then after about a year or so, that's when I went back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to fight. I'm going to like learn how to, I'm going to make sure this never happens again. And like I said, it definitely came from a place of like, yeah, like that, oh, like I'm going to make sure this happens. And for a while there, I mean, I picked it up. I ended up training at Pound for Pound is the name of the gym under Melvin Wesley. I ended up training and fighting 6 months later.
Wow, that's fast turnaround.
I started because I was so determined.
Yeah.
I was so determined. And you know what? If people have determination, they can do anything.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Allsmith. Today's guest is a USA boxing coach and an accomplished Muay Thai fighter with 3 state titles in Australia, of all places. She has blended her passion for combat sports with her role as a fight camp trainer. She's dedicated to empowering others, especially women, to find their inner strength and confidence through boxing and self-defense. Her journey from athlete to coach highlights her resilience, passion, and the power of transformation. Today, I'm excited to introduce Jessica Evans.
Wow, what an introduction. Thank you.
Kind of fun to unpack it a little bit.
Yeah, I'm excited.
But before we jump in, I want them to see the real you. What's cooking with the Chiefs right now?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we just had this side conversation. Just want you to know that I'm just predicting that the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl again this year.
Yeah.
Yep.
What stats do you have to go along with that if there's any bettors that are listening?
What stats? Well, let's just look at the track record of the last 5 years. I think that kind of speaks for itself. You know what I mean? Yeah, and also, I mean, I've had a lot of people doubt the Chiefs the last 2 years,
Okay.
and I just want you to know that they show up when it's time to show up.
Yeah. What if Mahomes were to get hurt?
I don't like to think in what ifs.
Oh, okay.
Like, what if all of a sudden I walked out of this interview? Do you know what I mean?
You could.
Yeah.
You could.
And then we just went, no, what I'm saying is the Chiefs are going to show up. You know what? He was injured last year.
Yeah, that was a horrible ankle injury.
He had
I
a
felt
hurt
for him,
ankle.
and he was a stud in the Super Bowl.
And look at him. He still came back. He's like hobbling on one foot. That, in my mind, that is an overcomer. That's someone who's master of the craft.
That was impressive.
100%.
It really, really was impressive, especially considering he's just got a target on his back, and he's known for being incredibly mobile and dancing with the ball and doing the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to still do that in the
And he
Super
runs
Bowl,
it a lot, too.
Totally. I could only imagine the pain he had on the other side of that Toradol wearing off. That had to be brutal.
For sure. But look at him. I think he's an example of someone who knows how to show up under extreme pressure.
For sure.
He's becoming like the next Tom Brady.
Yeah.
And I love that he got to play against Tom Brady and experience that. I think that was really cool.
Yeah, it is cool. The other thing that's really interesting about the NFL, I've talked to a few NFL players on the show, is that the average career is like less than 3 years. And so the fact that Mahomes has been as resilient as he has, taking a lot of those big hits. I mean, even Travis Kelce. I mean, he's blocking. Right. He's doing a lot of things. I mean, all it takes is a hand to get stuck in a shoulder pad, and it could be an issue with the shoulder. Like, you're getting tackled every which way. It's pretty cool to see the resilience of those guys over the course of time. I mean, even somebody like LeBron, being in the NBA for 20-plus years, like, duration and longevity seems to be really standing out now. And you mentioned Tom Brady. I mean, that guy seemingly
top of their game, too.
Yeah, seemingly played forever.
I actually think it's more impressive. I mean, I love the young people coming in that show up and are just killing it. Mm-hmm. But I think it's more impressive when people have been doing it for 15 so years and they're still the top. Absolutely. The top of their sport. And I love watching it.
Yeah, it's cool. I like the passion that you show out for football. And the shit talking, it's good.
Hey, I'm an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. So, like, shit talking. I'm also a military family.
Okay.
Like, shit talking is kind of like, that's our expertise.
I definitely want to unpack that. But real quickly, I want to backtrack a little bit. Something really stood out to me about your Instagram. Okay. And I mean, you've got amazing content on there. I'm excited to learn more about the producing and creativity side of you. But for me, it's the layers. It's peeling back the layers of the onion. And there was a caption here that I thought was just fantastic that I want to read for people. Okay. I know the wheels are spinning over there.
I'm like, which one is this? Okay.
It was from back in August. Okay. And I want people to really listen to this. Like, take notes. This was very well said. Somewhere beyond the constant alarms, the workout schedules, the business meetings, the traffic jams, the social ladder climbing, houses cleaning, and the endless bills that need to be paid. Outside the chaos of corrupt governments, world wars being fought, starving children, and homelessness, there's a beauty that surfaces. And it lingers, waiting for us to stop and take notice.
Wow, I didn't know you were going to choose that one. That's awesome.
I love that one. And there's been a theme, like with our probably last like 5 to 10 guests, around this concept of notice.
Yeah.
We're in such a hurry to get to the next thing. And ironically, I just got it tattooed actually over the weekend. Be here now. About presence and about notice. And I really love that you said that, because it's really easy for someone to look at your Instagram, see how fast you're moving all the time.
Right.
But being able to find the pause and the beat between punches, the beat between movements.
Yeah.
What comes to mind around that concept or that word notice? Because that was very beautifully written, in my opinion.
Thank you. It's a really good question. I would say for me, I'm a very type A personality. I'm a go-getter. I have been my whole life, and I constantly feel like I'm thinking of the next thing, thinking of the next goal, the next to-do list to tick off, because I love that feeling. But I would say that if you don't learn how to stop and recognize life on your own, it'll do it for you.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say that sometimes hits harder than when you initiate it, the same way that change is easier when you initiate change, but then when change happens when you don't expect it, it's harder to kind of swallow.
It's a great analogy.
Yeah. So for me, I want to fully be present and appreciate what it is that I'm experiencing and going through right now, because I'm never going to get back right now ever again. I'm never going to be 33 years old. I'm never going to be doing this. What I'm doing specifically, maybe in this moment, I'm not going to be, I'd fill in the blank. And I want to fully be present, so I also don't miss out, not of course on just what it is that I'm doing, but also on the people that I could impact. Because if we're constantly moving from one thing to the next, what about my family? What about the people that I could help impact their life? And to me, that means more like, I love the things that I get to achieve, but more than anything, I want to be known for leaving an impact on people's lives. And how can you do that if you're just scurrying from one thing to the next? I really want to be able to see people where they're at. So that's what being present really means to me.
Yeah, I like that answer. I also think when you think of the analogy of, hiking to a place, if you're in such a hurry to get there, there's so much beauty. And when you look at just the timestamp, there's more time spent on the journey than the place.
Yes.
And you get to the place, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But who you became in the process of that, what you saw, the treachery that maybe you had to overcome, the different obstacles that landed on your lap that you had to navigate and mentally, physically, and emotionally deconstruct.
Yeah.
And I feel like that very much aligns to combat sports, because it's like if your head's thinking about, the car payment you missed over here, you're now getting popped. Right? Like how do you see like the transferability there of like extreme presence in your sport, but then seeing the transferable skills in your life?
I didn't know if you wanted to jump into that right away, but there are so many parallels with fighting with life. This is a massive one. The thing is that when you're in a fight, you can only be present. It is, I believe, one of the most vulnerable things that you can do with somebody is to fight them in close proximity, where you're getting out alive or they're getting out alive. I mean, clearly that's an extreme case,
Of
but
course.
You have to be fully present for the chess game. And if you're not, if you even take a second away, like it's more mental than it is physical, you'll lose. You have to be thinking 20 steps ahead in this instant. And how it's relatable to training for fighting is, man, I mean, they say that training is blood, sweat, and tears for a reason. I mean, you understand, you played sports yourself. It is the grind, and not every training session is great. And if you allow that to deter you or take you out, you're not going to do well in your fight. Like, I mean, you are constantly like grinding through your sessions. Like, and they actually say that fighters have something a little bit twisted with them. You kind of almost have to,
Yeah.
to take a beating the way that you do and then to wake up and go back and do it again. So you are constantly going through this refining process that you have to be present for. And sometimes it's not perfect, but that's what's going to just help you get to that day where you have to be fully present to perform.
I like that a lot. I also think there's little tastes of moments that keep you coming back. And I'll use an analogy here. I'm recently getting into golf with some friends, and in the beginning I just called it whack fuck because I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
Now it's like every now and then I get a couple good hits. And we were playing a par 3 over in Mission Bay with some friends the other day, and I was terrible off the tee, and the ball landed maybe like, I don't know, 50 or 60 yards away from the cup. And I'm listening to my friends that are kind of like experts or whatever. They're giving me their tips, and I'm just out there like enjoying the ambiance and like nothing to lose. But anyway, I have this chip, like I said, 50, 60 yards out. For whatever reason, like it all came together. And this was like my fifth or sixth time. Comes off, lands on the green, 1, 2, 3 in the hole.
Amazing.
The whole course is like, oh, like it was just this moment that I didn't know that I had felt that since like making a shot at like UNLV or in front of like a ton of fans in college or professional sports overseas. And like, that's how I view moments within boxing. Like there's a slip or there's a certain move that you've been working on. You've been trying to set somebody up a certain way. And all of a sudden, like you may have a terrible fight, but then that one moment you're like, oh, I've been working on that and I finally figured that out. That's at least the ideology that I've heard in the realm of jiu-jitsu as well.
Yeah.
Like it's setting somebody up and then it's having an escape route. And in basketball, like anybody can make the first move, but it's like, can you make a counter to the counter to the counter?
Yeah.
And then when you're playing against another human, or in surfing, you're playing against the wave. It's like you have to have the ability to adapt. And so I think the way you described it was very cool. I'm trying to echo it from like a non-fighting lens and create metaphors into other sports that I know a little better. But man, it just sounds like this cognition. And even in describing it just now, I couldn't think about anything else.
Right.
It was only that, which is so special as far as just presence.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. And I'm glad that you went there. It's about adaptability. And I've recently been really thinking about this because I watched the Simone Biles documentary.
Yeah.
And they were talking about the reason why she's so great, because she's literally the Michael Jordan of gymnastics. Like you have to, she comes up with moves that are named after her.
Oh, yeah.
That no one else can do.
Also, just real quickly, the fact that she had such a tough experience on the big stage, coming back from that and performing the way she did, I was jaw dropped.
And winning.
Yeah.
But they talk about, and in relation to that, they talk about her ability to adapt. Like when she is focused and out there, she messes up, but you wouldn't even know it because her adaptability is so sharp. It's within seconds.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with Kobe Bryant. They always talked about his adaptability on the court and how he could come back. You ever notice like in sports, how someone can like mess up on something, maybe you've experienced this, and then it just haunts you the rest of the game or the rest of your practice because you just can't adapt. And they say that the full circle or the way that you can rate maturity of someone is their ability to adapt to a situation. And that's, I guess, how it's relatable to life. Like, how can we adapt to different situations in our life? And it doesn't mean like brush it off or brush it under the rug or not like deal with it. I don't think it's good to not properly process things, but the ability to have something happen and then, okay, like,
yeah. What I'm hearing is not just the adaptability, but notice and acknowledge when there's a fuck up, but don't let it live rent free between your ears. You gotta let that shit go.
Yeah.
Because, you know, in basketball, if you miss, I mean, I actually heard somebody talk about it the other day. His name's Jamal Crawford, and he was talking about NBA star as well, and he was talking about guarding Kobe. And the thing that he possessed was this dangerous level of fear where he could literally be 0 for 16 from the field, but you knew that at any moment, this motherfucker could go off for like 8 to 10 shots in a row.
I love it.
And so just the sheer element of that lives in the headspace of somebody else, that's dangerous. That's so cool. And that's very similar to like certain fighters, right? Like they could be getting their ass kicked the majority of the fight, but you know, like, oh, his striking game's really good, or like his Muay Thai game, or man, if he gets that other opponent to the floor, his ground game is incredible. And I don't know, that's something that I always think is really cool to watch. Is it's a moment in time, and if you catch somebody else's mind drifting or slipping or getting a little bit confident,
Gone.
Hey,
in fighting, this is all I gotta say. Anything can happen.
Yeah.
With anybody.
Yeah.
So I know that Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight's coming up soon.
Yeah.
Anything can happen.
Totally.
So I'm not putting my bets on anybody because, especially when you're dealing with such heavyweights. I mean, even in the lightweight category. I mean, they could have something happen the day before, walk into that fight, and they could be the one that people believe are going to win. No.
Yeah.
And it'd be over.
I like the way you said that. That's one of the things that makes March Madness so like euphoric and exciting.
Yeah.
Is that like you could have these underdogs just have the game of their life.
And it happens.
It does.
Yeah.
And I really think that when you're watching fighting, knowing that at any moment something can happen, it's freaking rad. I'm glad you brought up Mike Tyson. This is kind of random, but I saw it yesterday, and Eminem's been getting into the limelight a little bit more recently with the P. Diddy stuff. And aside from that, Eminem jumps in, and he was talking with Mike Tyson about what's your number one form of success. Like both of them have exceeded in their crafts tenfold, but they got on the concept of Haley, and that's Eminem's daughter. And he was like, man, like there was so much transition and change, and just like his career was taken off, and this and that, and reputation and outside noise, too many cooks in the kitchen. And he was like, yeah. And I don't know when this interview took place, but they said like, oh yeah, she's 23 now, and she's dating, she got a boyfriend, and she's doing really good, man. And he goes, of all things, that was my number one form of success, and just raising my kids. And he has a niece or a nephew that he helped raise as well. And the reason why I bring this up is because Mike Tyson actually lost his daughter when she was, I believe, 4. She jumped onto a treadmill and got stuck. Wow. And they asked him, hey, man, how do you deal with that? And he goes, I still do. He's like, I don't know that I'll ever get over that. But he had then mentioned that was one of the demons that he could use fighting to navigate those emotions. He was like, it was the only place where I could let go of the frustration, the rage, and the love that I felt for my daughter was when I was fighting or training to fight.
Yeah.
And I just think there's so much to process emotionally. Everybody does it differently, but I think it's cool when you channel it into sport.
I agree. It's really interesting you say that. First of all, I have a small brag. I did meet Mike Tyson. It was pretty amazing.
Oh, that's right.
He called me Dorothy.
Yes.
Because I'm from Kansas.
Yes.
I mean, I'm from Missouri, but you don't correct Mike Tyson. I was like, sure, I'm from Kansas.
All right.
No correction there.
All right.
Amazing. He's one of my favorite fighters to watch. The reason why I got into fighting was actually because of a domestic situation.
Okay.
When I was 19, it was a one-time situation. It was with the guy I was with, my boyfriend. But it was emotionally and verbally abusive as well. And I just remember when I finally got out of that relationship, I did have, it was my first relationship as well. I was young. And I was very manipulated. I was very depressed as well. And I just remember feeling so vulnerable and so outside of who I normally was. I did have to channel that anger. I had a lot of anger, and I held on to it for a very long time. All the way into, I originally started boxing for self-defense. I was like, I never want to be put in this situation ever again. I want to make sure that a guy thinks twice before he tries to bully me or lay his hands on me. And I always talk about how it's like, it was a painful story, but it turned into a purposeful one. It's like pain to purpose kind of moment. Because I didn't realize that it would turn into such a passion of mine. I mean, it started off as this, and then I started competing. I'm sure my parents, I didn't start till I was 21. I'm sure my parents were like, wait, what? So what, you're going to box now? You're going to fight? It was, usually people start when you're like, I don't know, 13, 15. And I just fell in love with it. And it did become a form of therapy Now, I do believe people should go to therapy. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
But it was an outlet for me. And to this day, I still use it as an outlet. It is, I believe it was something that I could really focus my attention and my frustrations and everything on. And I do think it really helped me out of that situation.
Free is the way to be. Life beats us up a bit and causes some bumps and bruises, but that doesn't mean we have to stay on the sidelines. This is why we've partnered with Kinyan Labs. Get back to doing what you love with this incredible portable device designed to get you back in the game. Kinyan is on a mission to move people from pain to possible with their top-rated red light therapy and laser solution, which tackles inflammation along with muscle and joint pain quickly and effectively. What I love is that it's portable and rechargeable, making it easy to actually incorporate into my everyday life consistently. It's small and lightweight, so you can throw it in your gym bag or work bag, or even an overnighter. Kinyan's lasers and LED combo make this cutting-edge device extremely versatile for use with general aches and pains, as well as chronic back pain, arthritis, post-surgery recovery, endometriosis, and more. This has been an amazing tool keeping my elbows and knees pain-free for pressing, pulling, and squatting in the gym. Great tools like the Move Plus give me the freedom and flexibility to continue living life on my terms without limitations. There are a lot of reasons why over 15,000 people are using this device and rating it 4.7 stars and above. Head on over to kinyan.io and use code ALLSMITH at checkout to begin your pain-free journey. What was the moment in time where you decided to make the change? Because it sounds like you endured it for a while and it seemingly was normalcy for you for a little while until you eventually like put your foot down. You were like, enough is enough. I'm going to take control of my life and protect myself.
Right. I guess everyone's rock bottom's a little bit different. For me in that relationship, like I said, it happened one time and I bloodied my nose, spin back, kicked me into a mirror. Like, whoa. Yeah, he was a fighter.
Oh my gosh.
And I stayed in the relationship for a little bit longer, but there was resentment there. I mean, as you would have, you'd hope. And I just think that what I realized is I remember having a conversation with my sister and she was like, you know, you can either rip off the Band-Aid now and it can be an extremely painful situation, or you can live with this 10 years from now. Let's say you married and have kids and deal with it then and it's going to be far worse. And I just, I guess, weighed the cost. And I also think that I realized, like, I deserve more than this. I know that sounds like very cliche, but I did. I was like, I don't want to be in this. But I just think that when you're in such a low place, when you have like a low opinion of yourself, when you've been in the thing is, like, abuse comes in so many different ways. Like I said, he was verbally, emotionally abusive. He secluded me from my family. I didn't have like really any friends. I was barely talking to my family. And this is how people like this work. They work and I was underweight. I was like weight like 95 pounds. I'm never under 100 pounds is insane. I could tell that I was like really depressed and I was secluded and I was on my own. And that's what people like that like to get you to, because you can't rely on anyone but them.
They kind of put you in a cage in some ways, and you don't even realize the cage is there, which is almost worse.
You don't until you finally and it was a very hard decision for me to make, but I just finally, we had a couple, of like squabbles, and then I finally was like, I'm done. And the thing is I'm one of those people, like, when I make up my mind about something, I'm like, I'd never go back on it. Like,
me too.
I'm
when I walk over the
headstrong.
line, I'm not going back.
So it takes me a while to get there, but when I get there, done. And it was like it was like a switch in me. And then I never looked back, and I'm really grateful for it. Now, I didn't get into fighting right away. I went away and lived in Columbia, Missouri for a while, which is like over near like Mizzou campus.
Okay.
And took some time to kind of heal for myself. I really needed it. And then after about a year or so, that's when I went back and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to learn how to fight. I'm going to like learn how to, I'm going to make sure this never happens again. And like I said, it definitely came from a place of like like, yeah, like oh, like I'm going to make sure this happens. And for a while there, I mean, I picked it up. I ended up training at Pound for Pound is the name of the gym under Melvin Wesley. I ended up training and fighting 6 months later.
Wow, that's fast
I
turnaround.
started because I was so determined.
Yeah.
I was so determined. And you know what? If people have determination, they can do anything.
Yeah, they kind of get the blinders. You're not as distracted anymore by the things in the external. The shiny objects aren't there because the shiny object is you.
Yeah.
And it's cool because it sounds to me that, first of all, the importance to have people in your life like your sister that are willing to have the hard conversations. Because at that point, you're probably like, well, but he's so good here and does this awesome thing. And like you're justifying. And she's watching it from a completely different set of lenses, just trying to protect her sister.
For sure.
And the willingness to lean into that heavy conversation, whether it's a sister, a therapist, somebody close in your life. I mean, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So it's like having the people that are not just like fluffing you up and blowing you up all the time, but definitely like, I've noticed this thing about you. Let's have the hard conversation.
Yeah.
Right? And more often than not, those that are willing to have hard conversations, those are the ones that are willing to change and adapt and keep moving in the right direction rather than playing in the land of stagnation.
For sure.
Right?
And I think that change and growth has always been very important to me. And I think that I saw what my future could be, and I knew I didn't like it. I couldn't even imagine who I would be if I had stayed, but I knew that I wasn't supposed to.
It's so crazy to me how you're on this trajectory, and I don't mean just you, but like people in general. And then there's some form of disruption. And then on the other side of that is this slow, steady start, trying to figure it out. But then those that have the fire inside, when that gets unlocked,
right,
just to see what's possible on the other side of that. I mean, your whole life changed after that for the better.
Yeah, 100%.
And so what happened? You jumped in, you were determined. It was a little bit of protection. It was a little bit of safety. It was also kind of just a middle finger to anything and everything.
Exactly.
And then you chose you. Like, where did that ideology come? And maybe for other people that are listening to this, what advice would you give them to just choose them?
It's a good question. I think that when it comes to making big choices like this, I call them fork in the road moments. I've had a couple of them in my life. I'm sure you've had them as well, where you have the ability to choose this path or this one, and they look completely different. And I do think there's something in us, like intuition, of what we know is the right one to take. But I think so often we want to go with what feels comfortable in the moment. But what I would challenge people to do is to choose what looks better 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And if you think that this direction that you're taking only looks good in the temporary, like the just the instant gratification, that instant moment, then I would say to choose the other direction. So I think that you need to think about who you want to be and what you want to happen in your life down the road, not just what you're seeing in the immediate. And I think that's what a lot of people make their decisions based on. I think that's why people stay. I mean, it's very layered of why people stay in, unhealthy or abusive relationships. But I just think that you feel so much pain in the moment. You think that it would be so much worse than what could come. But what could come will always be worse.
No, that's very well said. I like the reference to the concept of delayed gratification, because you're 33, I'm 34. We're of that age where like social media really wasn't there until a little later in our lives.
Like high school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like really cooking. And in the beginning it was like Facebook, but you had to be in college to get access to it, right?
Yeah, but did you get it in high school? I got it in 9th grade.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I was playing.
Yeah, I say.
But here's the thing. There is a concept of just investment of time into things that are meaningful back in the day. And what I mean is like, let's just use dating as an example.
Yeah.
You had to meet people within your demographic and put in the effort. You couldn't just swipe, right? So it's like the other thing to note within abusive relationships is like there is an investment of time that both men and women might be getting older, or they might be, stuck in their career. There might be other things. And then there's the loneliness component where it's like, when the grass is always greener and you have this FOMO perception that everybody else has this whole world figured out, which none of us do, it's like you start playing and weighing and measuring like, oh, I'm supposed to be here at this time and this place. And it's just this toggling with expectations. And I think when you exchange the expectation for appreciation, your world changes. And I think what's great about what you're talking about here is when you look at fighting, you can't just show up. You have to show up every day.
Yeah.
There's a big difference there. You have to refine the skills because it's very dangerous. And so when you think about the investment of time, when you think about showing up consistently, even on the days where you feel like garbage, even on the days when you feel awesome, even on the days where it's somewhere in the middle, what comes to mind there as far as just like when you made the decision to upgrade your life? Like that wasn't just like, were you just thinking short-term memory, like every day I just got to get there? Because like you're still battling demons personally. You're still probably trying to manage your career. There's a lot to unpack there.
You know, every day during that time when I was going through all of that, it was an every day. I was just trying to get through the day. And I think sometimes it's good when you go through really hard seasons just to focus on the day or the hour or the week, because anything outside of that, because I read this amazing book called Who Switched Off My Brain, and it talks about how the brain actually can't do two things at the same time. It can't survive and grow. I was in survival mode. So I wasn't even in the place of like, and this is what my future will look like, and I'm going to grow and I'm going to be a great person. I just knew in that moment what I did not want for my future, and then I was just surviving every day. So once I got through that survival, and I'm so glad because I did have like my sisters to hold me accountable and to be there for me and a good support system. After that, I was like, okay, now how am I going to make sure this never happens again? And then that's when I went into that the middle finger mode that you talked about. And what's amazing is that even if you make decisions, let's say out of a negative experience and maybe with a negative mindset, they can still turn into a positive one. And that's exactly what happened. I of course, made this decision kind of out of like, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say a negative mindset because I did it because I wanted to protect myself, but I was definitely being like, I'm going to show this, like I definitely, I had some like force behind it. But I think that it just comes with taking just one step at a time. I always tell people, like from a coaching perspective, I think this is why discipline is so important. I think a lot of people really rely on being motivated, but what about when you're not motivated? And I love the saying, like, when motivation fails, you fall back on discipline. Yeah. That's why I wake up and people are like, are you working out today? I don't even think about it. Of course.
It's a non-negotiable.
It's a non-negotiable. And I think the hardest thing to conquer and discipline is your mind. And I think that's why a lot of people fall into patterns, right, of bad relationships. And I noticed myself, even after that, let's say it was a year or something later, still got into a not so good relationship until I finally was like, I'm going to remove myself from the situation because I see the pattern of what I'm falling into. And that's when I moved overseas. So I know that feels like a very extreme example. You don't have to like move overseas to like change your life. But for me, I knew my personality, and my personality is, I needed to be removed from this situation and put in somewhere where I could grow and thrive and be challenged. And that's what I did. And it started a completely different trajectory in my life. Now, it was a lot of hard work because I had to dig down and really figure out that point of pain and forgive that person for that situation I had been through. And then once I figured that out and I was still competing, that's when things really started to unlock for me. And that's when I started teaching other women. I started working with women who had maybe been in situations themselves, got to help raise some money for this company called A21, which is for like human trafficking victims.
Very cool.
For like women that have come out of that. And then on top of it, I also just realized that I got to teach at my fight gym that I was a part of, and I got to train just guys as well. And I realized that I really had a passion for actually teaching other people how to fight or how to defend themselves. And the rest is kind of unfolded from there.
It's such a beautiful story. The other thing that's important to note here is oftentimes people ask, like, what do you want? And it's such a loaded question. It's really hard to get there sometimes.
Yeah.
So maybe sometimes it's process of elimination. You very clearly knew what you didn't want.
Exactly.
So you're like, okay, I'm going to remove that and I'm going to separate myself from that. And then you tried again and realized the patterns were still kind of involved in your arena of life. And so what'd you do? You removed yourself from that environment. That environment wasn't serving you anymore. You realized there was familiarity that could lead to the land of comfortable complacency. And you said, fuck it, I'm going to go across the pond. And what's great about travel that I think sometimes people don't recognize, different smells, different ambiance, different energy, different frequencies to operate at, different culture. And in the beginning, like most Americans show up and like, oh, I know what I've got this.
Right.
And then finally you realize like, oh no, I need to submerge myself in the culture, kind of pick up some of their ways, maybe get some of the dialect or the food. And then all of a sudden you're developing a tribe. Now loneliness starts to dissipate because you're connected with people. You're doing things that are maybe outside of the ordinary, refining your human experiences. And then as a byproduct, very slowly but surely, you don't even realize it, but one day you look in the mirror and you're brushing your teeth and you're like, I actually like who I'm becoming again.
Yeah.
Right? Was there a moment while you were in Australia kind of putting one foot in front of the other, learning to forgive, refining your skills, but was there a moment where you're like, we're doing it. We're doing the thing. I've let go of all those things. Those people no longer have a stronghold on me.
You know, that's a great question. I would say that probably happened about maybe a little into my second year after living abroad, because I lived there for almost 5 years.
Yeah.
And I was learning how to break down all the walls of what I had kind of built up. And I was also, I mean, because there was a couple fights there for a while where I was like, I even sent that ex like photos of me winning.
Really looking for
like
that.
I was just like, I was fueled, you know, like I was like,
I'll show
won
you.
that one.
Yeah, I'll show
won
you.
that one. You know what I mean? But when I finally let that go, you want to know what it is? And even Mike Tyson actually talks about this, since we kind of talked about him, is not feeling like you have to prove anything anymore. And I think once I got to that place where like, I don't have to prove anything to him anymore. I don't have to prove anything to this person anymore. And when I just felt comfortable with where I was and where I was going, I think it was in that second year. And I felt like I'm really kind of healing from this situation. It was so hard. I don't want to like tell people like this fantasy world of like, it's easy, because it's not. And also moving countries is really hard as well amidst all this. But it was exactly what I needed. And I can't say that there was like one moment in the mirror where I'm like, yes. I just remember this sense of peace that I never had before. And it was in my second year living there where I was kind of getting into the swing of things. I didn't feel like I had to prove anything anymore. And I was starting to fight for me. I was fighting for me now. I wasn't fighting to show him or show somebody else that I could. I was like, I can do this. This is for me now. This is for my gym. And I started to shift my perspective on why I was doing what I was doing. And I think it was necessary, and I think it was really healthy as well.
I think that's the difference, is when happiness, the pursuit of satisfying everybody else, chasing validation, the pat on the back, the claps, the likes, it's all out of your control.
Yeah.
We all have to play the game a little bit. But when you come down to it, Rick Rubin said it beautifully. When you're painting something or you're making some sort of art, which I would categorize fighting as a form of art, there's always going to be somebody that says it's not good enough.
Yeah.
There's always going to be some sort of flaw that somebody picks up. It's human nature to just pinpoint, oh, that's what's wrong with that person. That's what's wrong with that person. And I think when you learn to just acknowledge the existence of that stuff, but just be like, hey, you can I want you to eat. You're just not going to eat at my table anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're not like vindictive of like, fuck you, I hope you get hurt. You're just like, no, like we had our relationship. You taught me a lot and I wish you well. You're just not allowed in my aura anymore. I've evolved. I've moved on.
Right.
And I crave peace more than I actually crave your validation.
Right.
And I think that is so fucking freeing, because now you're moving and you don't have that weight vest on anymore. You're lighter, you're more creative, and then you're noticing that you're fully enrolled in the human experience, you probably saw tremendous bleed over into the depth of conversation.
Yeah.
Maybe the palpable, like how food tastes, how things touched. Maybe getting in the ocean, you could feel things a little bit differently because you didn't have this film or this fog encompassed around your being anymore, because you were just living.
Yeah, I like to call them like rose stained glasses. It's like when you see life through a whole different, like when you put on sunglasses and you're like, everything's dark outside, and you take them off, you're like, actually, it's really bright. And just removing that layer, I think, is really important. And also, as twisted as it sounds, but I just think this is very important, is that I really do believe everything happens for a reason. And I'm not saying that it's good, obviously, of what I went through. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but it turned me into who I am today and set me down the path that I am on. And for that, I'm grateful. So I can only show gratitude for the experiences and what I've been through, because I had no idea. I think that we always have an opportunity to use our hardest moments, our positive ones as well, but our hardest moments to help other people who walk through the exact same thing. And that's what I realized.
It's a concept to pay it forward.
Yeah. And what I realized is that so many women have been through or are going through something so similar, or just need an outlet or to like believe in themselves. And if I get to help them have that small glimmer of hope in themselves, then for me, it's all worth it.
Yeah, for sure. You're only able to get a knockout if you have the courage to get into the ring. You're only able to find love if you're willing to get hurt in the pursuit of it.
Yeah.
Enrolling yourself in the human experience takes a level of risk tolerance. And so what I'm hearing from your story is that, like, it doesn't sound beautiful, but it's like the pain of suffering is way better than the pain of regret.
That's well said. Yes.
Right? Because you're in pursuit of love. And just because you didn't find it in that particular person doesn't mean that, like, there wasn't loving moments. That doesn't mean that, like, you weren't learning and evolving and trying. And I think our world is so fucking obsessed with achievement all the time.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing that goes on, like, the 30-second reel. And like, and it's not just Instagram. I mean, you look back in the day, you see like trailers for movies, and that like hypes us up to be like, oh, we're going to go watch that movie. But like the Rocky trailer is maybe 60 to 120 seconds, but his story is significantly longer than that. What he endured, most people don't see.
Yeah.
And I think at least one of my goals in the podcast space and the storytelling space is like, let's show it all.
Yeah.
Right? Let's show it all and really show the authenticity of the human being, because that allows relatability.
I agree.
And then it almost empowers people more, because they don't feel like certain moments or people are unattainable or out of reach. So I really appreciate you sharing the authenticity of your story, because it's helping me, at least from the outside looking in, understand you a little bit better and feel your energy and understand like, oh, like it's so easy for you to now pay this forward because you didn't just go through it, you felt it and you endured it for a really long time. And so jumping into now your coaching and your teaching, what does that look like if we were to paint a picture for somebody?
Well, what I do now is I actually work for an online fitness app called Fight Camp.
Very cool.
Which Mike Tyson's an investor in.
Hey.
Which is why I met him,
That's
which
cool.
was pretty cool. I met him at work. And think of the Peloton of boxing.
Okay.
So it's like a Peloton on-demand app that people go in and they can work out at home.
Nice.
And they take my kickboxing workouts.
Well, that's great.
And we have such an amazing community of people that take our workouts, and the hundreds of thousands of members just across the United States. And it's just, honestly, it's so funny. You're up there and you're a coach and you're just thinking like, because we filmed a camera, and you're just thinking, I'm teaching them this, I'm teaching them that. But then when we hear their stories, they're teaching us. And I think that's so amazing. Like we work with like cancer survivors, and we work with military, like veterans. And it's just like hearing their stories and like why they show up to the bag just reminds me why I do what I do.
That's so cool.
It's amazing. It's just such a great just such a great community. I love what I get to do. And then on the side, you know, I just like do my own training, and I train people like one-on-one if I have the free time as well.
Very cool. The thing I love about what I'm watching you do is it's so much more than just the X's and O's of fighting.
For sure.
It's using movement, breath work, a little bit of violence, but also a lot of technique to create this safe space of vulnerability, because then it does unlock the stories. And when you go through something together, whether you're a student or a teacher, there is a middle ground of connectivity of like, we just did that together.
Right.
And I'm losing weight. I'm unlocking confidence. I'm thinking differently. I learned the new skill that you taught me. I finally coordinated my breath to punch.
Yeah.
There's a lot of physiological adaptations that take place that maybe at the onset you don't even realize you're impacting it, but then when you get the feedback, the input becomes the output.
Right.
And you get the feedback on the other side. Now there's that inner component that's like, whoa, I didn't even realize it was going to impact that person in that way. Then they get to share their story.
Yeah.
And that story now creates buy-in for somebody else to now have an entry point.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually one of our mission statements, is to inspire the fighter within.
Ooh.
And the
Ooh,
reason,
I like that. That might need to be the title of your episode.
Please do.
I love that.
And you want to know the reason why I love that is because, and this is why I say that fighting has so many parallels with life, because people are constantly fighting something.
Yeah.
So and this is also why fighting, I think, really stuck for me in the beginning, is I was outwardly expressing what I felt like on the inside.
Yeah.
And it was like the first time I felt like I could express myself. And I've done sports my whole life. I'm from Missouri, the Midwest. What do? You eat barbecue and you play sports.
Hey.
Okay. So I grew up playing basketball. I was a swimmer. I was a hardcore swimmer for a long time. Track, cross country, you know, state, the whole thing, right? But nothing felt like mine, and like I was really expressing myself until I learned how to fight. And I get that from a lot of people, because like I said, people are going through stuff all the time. Like they're going through work stuff, or, you know, the pandemic happened, losing jobs, family, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And it's that moment for them that they get to show up for themselves, and they get to fight through physically. They get to fight in a physical way, maybe what they're going through internally. And I love that I get to be a part of that. You know, one of the reasons why I actually had a career pivot, I think this is important to highlight, because I actually came from a production background when I lived in Australia. And prior to that, I did production management, and I was an associate producer. So I really came from the production world, totally different, and moved over here for production. And then it was actually in, I think it was 2019. I even still sometimes get a little like hot thinking about it, because 2019 was the worst year of my life. And 2019 was the worst year of my life because my little brother passed away.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. And nobody really knew like what our family was going through, like with all that, except unless you were like really close to our family. But when he died, I had this moment where I'm just like, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I in production? I know I'm good at it, but what's it helping really? I really believe in the power of stories, though, which is why I believe I went into it. But I wasn't satisfied, and I don't think that we should just do things that make us happy, because I think happy is like a wayward emotion. It can come and it can go the same way as being motivated or inspired. But I had a moment where I was like, am I just gonna, why do we do what we do every day if it's just gonna die?
You wanted impactful legacy. You wanted to build something that would live on.
Yeah.
When you moved on.
Yeah. And I just decided that the next chapter of my life was going to be something that I did because I wanted to do it, not because other people thought that I was good at it or that I should do it. So really, I kind of did it for my brother.
Another fork in the road moment.
It was.
Right.
It was a big one.
I really appreciate you sharing that. I want to jump into the topic of grief.
Yeah.
It's a confusing element to the world. You and I can relate on that. I actually just lost my mom in July. She just passed, and it's such an interesting component because like the world really wants to do good. Like, oh, I'm here for you. You know, I'm so sorry for your loss. Like there's not really the right amount of words.
Right.
I think one of my favorite things that people do for me is, hey, I'm here.
Right.
I'm holding space for you, or they just give me a hug. But then my really favorite thing is like, hey, tell me a story about your mom. Right? Like if somebody asks you to tell a story about your brother, like the memory recollection makes it as if like they're back again for a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? And like maybe that is the beauty of production in some ways, but then also you get to think of him all the time while you're channeling it into your day-to-day craft. But when you think of grief, what advice could we explore today? I don't think either of us is going to have like the answer.
Right.
But the world doesn't know what to do. And like I'll also say this, like right at the onset of death, everybody's there. Right? And that's
2
not
weeks.
the hard part. Yeah,
2 weeks, yeah.
That's not the hard part because you're doing the funeral arrangements, you're getting death certificates, you're figuring out all the transactional stuff. You're in a fight or flight response, your adrenaline's cooking.
Yeah.
And then it all dissipates.
Yeah.
And you're left sitting there without somebody that means the world to you.
Yeah.
And nobody understands.
Literally, unless they've gone through some sort of
Exactly.
Yeah, grief themselves.
Totally.
As you said, like grief is such a layered. It's so layered because when you lose someone close to you, like what you've experienced as well, it's you lose a piece of yourself. You can't explain it any other way other than that. It's not like it's going to grow back one day. It's just like you have to learn what your new normal looks like. I think you said it best. I think what doesn't help is when I would say that the biggest thing that would frustrate me when he very first passed away was, I'm so sorry. He's in a better place. This will all have a purpose one day. And I'm just like, this is not the right thing to say. This is not, I understand and I believe that myself, that it will make sense one day. But that's not what you tell somebody right after they've gone through, like literally probably like one of like the hardest things that you can go through, I believe. I like the way Andrew Garfield said it in an interview because he talked about his mom who had passed. And he said, I cry and I'm okay with crying because it's just love expressed that I had for this person. And I just thought that was so beautifully said because for a while there I felt ashamed kind of like to cry about it. But this is just me expressing the love that I had for this person. And I would say that the biggest way that I think my advice when it comes to grief is to allow yourself to feel everything. Don't shut it down. Allow yourself to be sad if you're sad, or be happy if you're happy, or share memories like you said when I'm with my family. Because honestly, I feel worse more for my parents. I mean, obviously I'm a sibling and it affected me, but I would have no idea how it would affect parents to a child. So when I'm around them, I want us to talk about it. I noticed that they don't really like to bring it up, but I want us to talk about it. I want to visit his grave site. I want to do things in remembrance of him. I want to live a purposeful life because it's not always guaranteed. Like I want to make an impact and to know that I lived a good life because I know that he'll never get to do that. So I want to do that in honor and for him. But I would say that the biggest piece of advice that I have learned is just allowing yourself. I would kind of like shift my emotions based on who I was around because I didn't want them to feel bad. I think that's like our normal human tendency.
I definitely do that. There's some people that have the capacity to receive when you're excreting tears. There's some people that it makes them incredibly uncomfortable and then avoid it. And then you feel like really lonely, like a sense of shame for like oversharing, but you couldn't really control the grief in that moment.
Yeah.
And
or
so,
they just don't know what to say. They say the wrong thing because that happens a lot as well.
And I think for a long time, it's almost like it unlocks a reactive response initially, and then you're like, wait, they don't know.
Right.
They're trying to do their best. You have to view it from their lenses. Like, it's a sticky spot. But then over the course of time, I actually think these types of conversations are so beautiful because it's bringing to the forefront often something that people just like stuff into the junk drawer at home. And it only comes out typically when somebody's drank too much or they've like skydived or something like that, where it's like, oh my gosh, I felt so connected to that person. But it's like, that's not life. Life's actually meant in the mundane or lived mostly in the mundane. And I think finding little slivers of connection and storytelling. And I mean, for those of you listening, one of the best things you can do for people is, I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm holding space for you.
Yeah.
Give me a call, shoot me a text, give me a brain dump via text or whatever, because that allows somebody to just have an outlet.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you have to solve it, you have to fix it, or any of those things. You don't have to say thoughts and prayers. You don't have to do really anything. You just kind of have to be.
Yeah.
And something about that is such a paradox to the human experience, because we're like, what can I do? Can I send food your way? Can I send flowers? And it's like, I mean, you could, but it's like, just be there. That's cool.
I agree. I think that, you know, I would as well. I would get upset with people if they wouldn't ask how I was, because it is such like a strange outer body experience, because you do go through something so extreme and then people are there, they're there, let's say 2 weeks, a month, and then life just goes on. And you almost like don't want to be happy for people because you're like, how can you not like, you know, in those movies, like when someone's like screaming, but it's like white noise, you can't hear them. It kind of feels like that. Yeah. Like, I'm going through so much right now. Like, why can't you? Which is another reason why being a coach, teacher, instructor, you give people this opportunity to feel seen, heard, and understood. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to speak for myself here. I'm oftentimes giving to other people what I also want and need in return. Yes, of course. Right? And so... like preaching to yourself a little bit? Totally. Yeah. And like, when I fall off track, I'm like, man, I need to maintain the discipline or coach me the way I would coach somebody else. Oh, cool. Back on track the next moment. Yeah. But I definitely think that that's an important concept. I also want to share this. It's really freaking cool. Since we started our conversation around notice, I remember I was speaking to a therapist one time and I was like, man, like, I just feel like an orphan. Both my parents are gone now. Like, who can I turn to trust? They're gone. Like, how do I? And he was like, stop. They're not gone. You're just not noticing. And so all of a sudden, every morning I sit out in front of my house, get about 10 minutes of sun while I'm having my coffee, just kind of reflect and process. And I used to listen to music, or I used to like reach out to clients and whatnot. But now I allow this 10-minute buffer for myself. I notice the birds. I notice the trees. I see how the clouds are moving. I give a hand or a wave or a smile to passerbyers or people walking their dog. I feel the ground underneath my feet. And I know that somewhere out there is my parents' energy. And all of a sudden, this freaking bumblebee has been harassing me every morning since she passed on July 23rd. It's actually landed on my head 3 or 4 times. And very similar to how I knocked off my headphones just now, I would like knock it off. And all of a sudden I was like, man, there's like a consistency of the presence of this bee. So I looked it up, and apparently it's a connection to the afterlife. And that feels woo-woo, but also like I can't help but notice the pattern. Every morning I go out there, this bee doesn't seem present, and it comes to say what's up. And so I would also say that it is cool to like challenge people to be like, hey, maybe they're not here in the same form. But if you channel imagery and what it felt like to be around them, or you share stories or ideations, and you look just a little bit harder in between the crevices or in between the busyness of life, you may notice their presence in a unique fashion. And whether it's placebo or not, it feels good in that moment. And I think you can do that through boxing as well. Yeah. Right? You can do that through holding space and depth of conversation before and after sessions, not just grabbing your stuff and running out the door. Right.
And so there's so much to unlock here between navigating hard experiences, loss, and who you become in the pursuit of your peak expression in the midst of life simply just happening.
Yeah, literally.
Right? And it's going to happen to all of us.
Yeah.
That's so cool. As you've kind of overcome some of your personal challenges and you've evolved kind of into this training and mentorship, how have you kind of found a rhythm, right? Like everybody was doing the Peloton stuff. Now you've got this online app, but you're not necessarily with people all the time. Sometimes it is different when there's a screen in between. And I'm just curious, like how you're able to turn that element on and really connect to people, even though it's virtual.
The Trident family taught me something really important this last year, that we are all a bundle of stories, both good, bad, and everything in between. All of their cold brews remind their customers that they are part of something bigger than themselves. I start my day with the Sweet Cream Cold Brew as I am prepping my mind and body for fitness, service, coaching, and podcasting. With various locations in San Diego, they offer over 14 nitro cold brews and a variety of specialty drinks. You can find the perfect brew and pair it with one of their treats from the Keto Bakery. You can check them out over at tridentcoffee.com and use code ALLSMITH to take your coffee experience to the next level.
I try to think of that one story behind the lens that I'm speaking to. Maybe it's Kim, Thomas, I'm making up names. 38-year-old mom stays home with her kids. Maybe she's a single mom. I try to really relate to one person when I teach and think what way do I need to show up for them? What way do I need to coach them? Because it'll be different. I mean, the way I would coach you would probably be a lot different than the way I coach, a mom from the Midwest or something.
Totally.
So I think for me, because it is sometimes hard, when you don't see faces, when you don't have interaction, especially in a age, in a time where community is non-existent.
Yeah.
You almost can't find it anymore. Like people rather stay at home on their phone looking at things rather than meet up in person.
Yeah.
And I would say that's one of the reasons why I love Europe. People are out and they're having conversation and they're not on their phones and they're having those real life experiences that then you talk about, not just post about. So when I teach in the virtual way, I'm trying to think of that individual story, and sometimes I'll just make it up. Sometimes I don't actually think these people are real people. Sometimes they are real people because we can communicate with the Fight Camp community. Sometimes I'll speak to that specific person that I want to, or dedicate the class to them, but really what I'm doing is I'm trying to think of that one person, because because people want to be seen more than anything. And I want to be able to see like one individual.
I like that you're able to gain access to these case studies, whether it's an actual one or maybe a combination of multiple across your career, or it's a story that you recently read, or maybe a story that you came across, whether that's reading or listening, because that does allow you to have access to a target demographic for that moment.
Right.
And even though sometimes, and it is important to note everybody's story is a little different, but we're also really connected.
Yeah.
And like somebody's story could be somebody else's survival guide. And you never know, like if you're impacting that person today, how it's going to positively or negatively impact others. And you pick another story the next day. And like being able to do that consistently and having that level of delayed gratification.
Right.
Now it's like you have this whole track record of people you've impacted based on your teaching.
Yeah. And I do also speak quite a bit from personal experience.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm not shy of it because there's lessons in what we go through. And I do think that my experiences could be, similar to Joe in Iowa.
For sure. Vulnerability breeds that vulnerability for sure.
Yeah. People even like my name, you're going to die. This is Jess from the Midwest.
Yes.
Come on, right?
That's so good.
And you know what's funny?
Jess from the Midwest. I'm changing your name on my phone.
We have so so many fight camp members who are from the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
So it's cool because it's like that point of relatability. And I'm the only one, like everyone else, all the other trainers and coaches, you know, they're from cool places like Philadelphia and Boston. And I'm from Kansas City. I mean, I think where I'm from is kind of cool because I'm so grateful for my roots, because I do think it gave me a different perspective on life. So I feel like I appreciate life in such a different way, being from such a small space, because the town that I grew up in, growing up, there was 4,500 people. Okay. Yeah.
I think my high school had that many.
Exactly. So talk about like small beginnings, right?
Yeah.
But so I think it gives me different perspective, and I like speaking from that perspective because I've been able to see and do quite a bit for someone from the Midwest.
Well,
no one leaves the Midwest when you're from there. You stay.
For sure.
Some people stay in the same town.
It's very well said. I have a fun fact for you.
Okay.
You're going to die when I tell you this.
Okay, I'm looking forward to this.
My mom is actually from Boonville, Missouri.
I know Boonville. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh. Okay, so get this. We played Boonville in basketball.
Oh, that's cool.
And we ran against them. Did you know that Boonville, fun fact, here I got one for you too. Mm-hmm. Boonville, I believe, also has one of the only Clydesdale horse farms. Like within like who knows like how far. Like they don't really breed Clydesdales anymore, but they have one in Boonville, Missouri.
That's cool. You want to hear another fun fact?
Yeah, let's do this. You've never been to Missouri?
No, I have.
Okay,
I've been there a few times. My mom actually owns a farm there.
What?
Yeah.
Is the farm still exist?
Yeah. So me and my siblings are going to be going out there and kind of checking it out and deciding the next steps on it. But it's not a Clydesdale farm.
Okay, well, shoot.
But it is.
You got my hopes up. I'm like, is the plot twist that you own that farm? I mean,
that'd be so cool. The irony there would be pretty badass.
I'm pretty sure almost like everyone in Missouri owns a farm. Like my grandfather, who was a Colonel Air Force pilot.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I got a huge military family. Shout out to all the veterans and current military. He owns 4 farms.
Incredible.
3 crop farms in like somewhere very far away in the Missouri side, and then a cattle farm that I helped my dad out on.
I love that. Something that stands out to me about your story, just knowing my mom's one of 12. Oh, so wow. I met a lot of her siblings and just kind of like felt their culture a little bit. They're great at this. They actually care about connecting.
Yes. And
my mom was probably one of the best caregivers ever, not just for our family, but like to cousins, to friends, to neighbors. And I think that's a huge shout out to the Midwest culture. Like they genuinely care. Maybe it's because, 4,500 in a town is not so overwhelming that you feel like you can't know everybody, but there is this connection. I've got your back. I'm going to care about you.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny you bring that up, because I've lived in California for 7 years now. And anytime I meet someone from the Midwest, I know. Mm-hmm. They don't even have to tell me. I know they are. Because they also just say hi. And I didn't realize that that's like such like an odd thing. But I mean, I've kind of given in a little bit to California culture myself. When people say hi to me, I'm like, what do they want?
Exactly.
Because you think that.
You do. And I was going to say the land of transaction when you said California.
Right.
Because it's, hey, what can you do for me?
Yeah.
And I actually learned that in Europe when I lived there. Is like in Sweden, they say, hey, hey. And then when they pause and they say, how are you? It's not like a passerby of like, I'm good, you? Which is like surface level bullshit.
They're really curious.
It's actually like, no. Like, how's your well-being? How'd you sleep last night?
Oh, I love
Or
that.
in your case, I'm curious about this. How was your first sip of coffee today?
It was fantastic. Just FYI.
I saw she posted on her story. There's nothing better than that first sip of coffee.
There is nothing better. Tell me what's better than
Well, it's funny because I saw your story as I had like my second sip and I was like, damn, she's right.
Right? Okay, I'm so glad that you understand me on this. Yeah, I do believe that the Midwest mentality is different. It's so funny. I feel like Frodo. Are you Lord of the Rings fan?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I kind of feel like Frodo.
Precious.
Right? Well, not like in that way. But he went on this journey. I feel like I've gone on this journey outside of the Midwest. And I just wanted to do everything to get away from the Midwest, because I was like, this is so boring. And like, you guys just all live here and with your small minds. I literally thought this. This is what you think, right? You think you know everything. And I ventured outside of the country into a different culture. Like I went on my, you know, like the what is it? Like the hero story, the full, like went through my tribulations and everything. I've traveled overseas like so much, love traveling. I've lived in California, and then I love when I go back to Missouri. And it's so funny because I did everything possible to get out of Missouri. And now when I go back, I always go back for the holidays because I'm sorry people that live on the West Coast, but Christmas does not feel like Christmas in California. Like what? Like people go to the beach. That is so, I mean, I know our friend over here understands. He's from the East Coast, but I'm telling you, like, there is nothing like a cold Christmas. Christmas music makes sense. Like, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas.
Yeah.
You don't get that out here. So when I go back to Missouri now, it is so nostalgic and it's so peaceful. And I forget, you know, that whole thing about being present. I'm like, wow. I haven't been present because when I go home, you kind of have to be present because you're surrounded by people you don't see very often and it's so much slower.
Yeah.
And I love it. I'm like, wow, this is what I've been missing. There's no hustle and bustle.
Yeah.
There's no people trying to be an opportunist on behalf of with you. There's no like deadlines that I have to focus on. Like I'm not trying to be something. I just get to be.
Yeah.
And man, I really, when I go home, it's such an amazing just experience. So now every time I go to Missouri, I mean, and like I said, when I'm out here, I know when I'm talking to Midwest people, it's like a sensibility.
Yeah.
You don't really seem like you're from California though.
I grew up in LA and then came to San Diego for my first couple of years of college, went back to LA, but then I did live in Europe for a little while, and I think it shifted my headspace a little bit.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, just Midwest roots, and as far as my mom and just raising us with those values.
That's fair.
She definitely had us slow down. I do think it's interesting because similar to you, I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, went to the same high school as Ice Cube and Eazy-E. Ironically, when there was inner city busing back then, I was like the only white guy. It was great.
That's so cool.
But what's interesting is like exactly that. Like I always wanted out. I was like, there's more out there. I want to go explore, dream, discover, and get my feet wet and taste the different flavors of the human experience. And then my brother had a little girl. And now I'm like craving to go back as frequently as possible to like show the world to her and reconnect with my siblings and my brother and my sister as they're evolving in different chapters now that our parents are gone. Like we're becoming very, very close, which is cool. But there's something to it that's like we spend our whole life trying to escape home and only to realize that like we want to go back home.
Yeah.
Right? And then there's the other side of that, which I toggle with often, which is, do I love home because of the contrast? Right? Like you described presence, slowing down, and no deadlines. But if that was all you were exposed to, did you feel like you were wasting potential? Did you feel like you weren't doing enough? Would you feel like you need some sort of middle ground of like increasing the pace of the Midwest, but then decreasing the pace of the hustle and bustle?
Right.
And I think that is one of the things that makes life so beautiful is you need light with dark. You need happy with sad. And I think if it was all one or all the other, I don't know that it would be as good.
I think you're so right. You hit the nail on the head. I was just recently, it's so funny you say this because I like to travel for work as well. I was just working a freelance gig with a company in Zurich and Dubai. Okay. Those are, talk about contrasts.
Oh, yeah.
Switzerland and Dubai, totally different. And I was loving it. It was amazing. It was 2 weeks and we did so much. And then I came back and I'm like, wow, I like really missed like just routine.
Yeah.
I really missed. So I agree with that sentiment of needing both. You need to be the go-getter, achieve your dreams, get out in the city, do this, do that, because you can't do it in the countryside, right? Like it's rural, there's no population. But then you also need those moments those nostalgic moments, those moments where you played board games with your family.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
like no one plays board games out here. Like, can we talk about that? Like, what?
We were a big Scrabble family.
Come
growing up.
on. Thank you. Were you good at 2-letter words?
I was.
Okay, my family memorized the Scrabble dictionary.
Yes.
Like, what?
I blame Words with Friends for that, though.
Yes,
Because
they
everybody
cheat.
was playing, yeah.
They cheat. I know.
Like what I noticed with Words with Friends is I'd be playing other people that had those words, and then I just added it to my toolbox of like, oh, okay, you got 100-something points on that triple word score there.
Right. I know.
Now I'm going to use that in my next one. So now people accuse me of being the cheater, but I just learned from the other cheater.
Yeah, honestly, you're the smart one. You just learn from your experiences.
Totally.
But I do think that we need these type of moments to be appreciative
Yes.
for these other ones. And I mean, like my sister, speaking of siblings, so I also have 2 sisters and an older brother, big family. There was 5 of us. And I mean, not like your mom.
Are you the baby?
I am now.
Okay.
But we did have a younger brother.
Yeah.
He passed when he was 24.
Okay.
But I just remember, like, okay, so one of my sisters is pregnant with her 6th daughter.
Oh, man.
She's 35, 6 daughters. She's a saint. I mean, come on. But
So's the husband to have that much feminine energy around all the time.
Right. I mean, but I feel like, yeah, I mean, we'll see when they get in their teens. That's going to be a
that's
crazy
tough.
ride.
You better
And
have
they're
some
all so cute.
good bros to come over to protect those girls.
And they are so cute. I'm just like, they're like little dolls. They're so precious. But my sister called me not too long ago and she was like, Jessica, after being a mom and seeing the way my daughters interact with each other, I just am so sorry. I was such a mean sister to you. And that's, again, you have to experience different things to have appreciation for others. And I just thought it was such a funny moment. I mean, when I was in it as a kid, it wasn't funny. I was like, she's so mean. She hates me.
Yeah.
But it's just like life has a way of coming full circle always.
We talked briefly about how as teachers or educators, we often give what we also need. It sounds to me that she had that personal recollection of how she was, so she's teaching her daughters to be better than she was.
Exactly. Yeah.
I think that's beautiful. That's art.
I think so too. And it also does give you a better appreciation for your own parents.
Totally.
Like, wow, like they literally didn't know what they were doing because I don't know what I'm doing. And it's pretty cool, like, to be an aunt to 5, almost 6 girls. And then my other sister has a little boy.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
That's going to be quite the white Christmas this year. A lot of little gifts floating around.
Lots of gifts. Oh my gosh. And they love presents.
I'm sure.
I was the same. Yeah.
What's next for Jessica Evans?
What is next for me? This is a good question. I've been contemplating this lately. There's actually a fun fact about me that you didn't know. We didn't even get to talk about it, but talking about like going through like life's unpredictability. I'm about ready to come up on my 2nd year anniversary from when I had a stroke.
Oh my gosh.
I know. We didn't even get to talk about this.
Oh my gosh.
I think this is really important to note though, because October 17th, I believe, will be my 2-year anniversary, but I did have a heart surgery. I'm great.
Goodness.
We're good. We're here.
I'm
And
just jaw dropped.
right. I know. And that's why I actually wanted to bring it up because again, I want to like reiterate to people that, through an abusive relationship, through losing my brother, through having like this crazy medical crisis that was literally out of nowhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the onset to that?
Right? I was 31. It's so crazy. There was nothing. That's what's so crazy. And I had just got done teaching an intermediate kickboxing workout with my right arm because I did the spinning back fist, which is my signature move. I knocked out a girl with a spinning back fist. Kind of proud of that.
Okay.
And
I need to see that video.
well, you can take a look. I just posted it like 2 days ago.
Okay.
And I was in there and 1 minute I'm fine. And next minute my hand's falling off the keyboard. And I'm like, oh. But the good thing is that I recognized, because I know my body so well, as an athlete, being in sports, my life, I could tell when something was off. I have really good body recognition. And I would try to do things like this, couldn't do it. So it's like showing that it's not computing. Yeah. But I didn't know what it was. I thought my blood pressure was low. I thought I needed to eat something or whatever. And because I had a pretty stressful period leading into that. A couple weeks prior, someone ran into me, totaled my car.
Oh my goodness.
There was a lot happening.
Yeah.
And life just has a way of bringing you different perspective.
Oh yeah.
Because I would say that outside of the stuff that happened with my brother, this was definitely one of the most scariest experiences in my life because it made me be present. I mean,
it also didn't really make sense. You were healthy, you were taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
and that is why it's so important for people to be present because life is so unpredictable. It's so unpredictable. I was completely healthy. I had all my blood work done. I was taken to the ER, had all my blood work done, got all the tests done, and they were going to rule it ischemic, which means they didn't know the cause. And I was like, well, I don't accept that. You know, that my personality, I'm like,
yeah, I want
wait
answers.
I need to know because what if this happens again? If I'm living a healthy lifestyle and I'm having a stroke, who's to say it's not going to happen? So we did additional testing, and what we did, shout out to Hailey Bieber talking about her stroke because that's actually why I went and got the test that she got.
Oh, cool.
And that's how I found out where it came from. I got a TCD, which they put like this helmet on your head. And you blow through a straw, and as you bear down, they try to see if there's bubbles that pass, and that's what we found out. I had something called a PFO, which is like a flap opening in your heart. So a week or two later, we actually, I think it was like a week later, we booked me for a surgery and closed it.
Oh my goodness gracious! I'm so glad you were able to get access to that test, though.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it sounds like if you did not get access to the test,
We wouldn't know.
And it could happen again.
It 100% could.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
especially in my line of work because sports or where they see this happen a lot is like even like with mothers who like go to pick up a basket because it's when you bear down, it opens up the left and right walls of your heart. And that's when something can pass through. And that's like if it's a blood clot, it's like a perfect storm is what my neurologist said.
Okay.
But I remember being there in the room with him, just like in crisis pretty much. Because I was just so scared. Everyone kept telling me, you're awfully young to have a stroke. And I'm thinking, you're not helping the situation. I know. Now I'm thinking I have a brain tumor.
Yeah.
I'm thinking worst case scenario. And he said, honestly, everyone walking around has at least like a 3 to 5% chance to have a stroke. Unprovoked. And I was like, wow. We really think we have control. We really think that we're like everything we're doing, like, oh, we're great. Nothing can happen, but it's not true. And what I wanted more than anything in that season of my life was just to be healthy. And it gave me such different perspective. We can be worried about work, worried about getting a car and all these things that really don't matter.
Yeah.
They don't matter. And I hate that I have to learn this lesson many times.
Yeah.
Feels like I have to learn this shit all the time. And I'm just like, damn, just get it through your head. Like all of this other stuff does not matter. It's fleeting. What matters is people and health and the impact that you have on their life, family. These things matter. But all this other stuff, your work, traveling, whatever, like, money. Like I understand that we need it to survive, but it doesn't matter because if you don't have health and you pass, it doesn't matter because then you don't even see it. You don't appreciate any of it.
So beautifully said. And what I'm hearing there is our world does this. I do this. We trade our health in pursuit of wealth. And then as a byproduct, end up using our wealth to regain our health. At some point, if we have that opportunity.
The American dream.
Yeah. And it sounds to me like both of us, especially you with the interaction with the stroke, you faced your own mortality. Yeah. You have a eye-to-eye, tangible experience with the other side. And I think because of that, it makes you so appreciative of where your feet are now.
Oh my gosh.
And that gives you an extra edge when teaching, when connecting. You might hug people a little longer.
Yeah.
A little tighter, and people don't totally understand it at first, but everybody's craving an element of love.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you sharing that today. That's a layer that I was not aware of.
Well, the reason why this is important is because it goes hand in hand with what I'm doing and why I'm so passionate about it. Because had my health not been good, I could still have deficits from a stroke. I know people that have strokes that they still are feeling the aftermath of it, but I literally walked out of the hospital the next day.
Incredible.
And I just remember thinking, though, in that moment, like when I had to stay the night and we didn't know what was going on and had all this, like, all the things are going through your head.
The fear, the uncertainty, and the doubt.
And this is where discipline of your mind is so important, so important. And I was like, I just want to be able to, like, throw a cross again. It's something so simple.
Yeah.
But it really takes you, like, falling flat on your butt to just be like, okay. So the future for me is teaching and sharing my story to help bring people out of dark seasons or out of whatever they are as much as I can. Because I do feel like if we keep our stories to ourselves, we're not benefiting anybody.
No way.
So that's also one of the reasons why I was like, of course I want to come on here and share my story.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was so fun today.
So much fun. And it was also great getting to know you and hearing your story. And so powerful as well. I don't think people talk about grief enough. And it's something that a lot of people have gone through. But I think creating a safe space for people to be able to talk about is really important.
Loss is going to happen to everybody. And so I'm actually kind of mind boggled as to why we don't explore the concept and educate it more, because it's going to happen to every single person on the planet.
Yeah. I think we're afraid to experience it fully. And that's why I said, I think the best thing you can do if you're walking through a season of grief is to allow yourself to feel it.
Yeah.
All the emotions, but I think we want to run from it.
Oh yeah.
Or hide it. So I think sometimes people are hesitant to talk about it because they're not ready yet to feel it or experience it.
No, it's very well said. Last thing. There's a song called Trailer Hitch. Have you heard that before?
This sounds like a country song.
Yeah. You can't take it with you when you're gone. And it really reminds me of what you just said. We try to put money, houses, cars, tangible items on this trailer hitch, but the best thing you can do is work on the things that nobody can take away from you. Yep. This inner level of confidence, the discipline, doing the right thing when nobody's watching, and treating people appropriately, putting your goddamn grocery cart away.
Right.
Right. Little things like that.
I love that.
Like, I don't know, that came to mind as you were sharing some of your story there. And I think it's important for people to note, like, so much of this stuff is fleeting.
It really is.
But we're here for human connection, depth of relationships, and to be fully enrolled in the human experience, even though sometimes it is a little bit painful and teaches us lessons we're not quite ready for.
Yeah.
But we're never ready for them. So if we always wait till we're ready, we're never going to keep progressing forward.
We just have to embrace it. And that's like the last thing I'll say is my mantra in like kind of like a sentence or a phrase I live by is do it scared. And any big or amazing decision or moment that I've ever made in my life was a moment out of being scared. Even when I fight, when I compete, I'm scared. I'm scared to death. Even Mike Tyson says that. Bring him back. Bring him back from the beginning. He says, I'm terrified before I get in there, but I embrace it and I do it anyways. And I would say that the biggest reward is on the other side of conquering that fear. Yeah.
Very well said. Where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Jess Evans Fit, all one word. I know people think my name is Jessie Vans, but it's not. Just want to clarify that now. It's Jess Evans Fit.
Totally.
Or you can also find me on the Fight Camp app where I teach and I get to help people every day.
Very cool. It was such a pleasure connecting with you today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Guys, if you enjoyed my conversation with Jessica Evans, please rate, review, subscribe, and share with your friends. And as always, stay on the hunt for who you've not yet become. Until next time.